We got a lot of NBA stuff to dive into now. Alex Kennedy is in Vegas. Summer League playoffs are continuing, and let's get his take on some of the highlighted rookies out there, some NBA news. Alex, what's happening, pal?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
All's well, and I guess I will ask you, you're out there. Is Lonzo Ball, has his name kind of been one of the top names on the list around the circles out there?
Yeah, he's been impressive so far. You talk to other players, they've been impressed from what they've seen from Ball. I'm kind of like you. I'm not a big Summer League guy. I think it's not a great indicator of NBA success. You see guys all the time do well in Summer League because they're more NBA ready, and then it doesn't transition over, or guys struggle, but they still end up developing into strong players. So I don't make too much out of it, but I do think, he's played pretty well. And if you're a Laker fan, there's certainly things you can be excited about. You mentioned the passing ability. I think there's been a lot of times where he's shown his poise and has done a really good job running the offense. His teammates have talked a lot about his leadership, and they have a lot of confidence in him. And I think, the early shooting display, that was a concern, but the fact that he was able to bounce back from it, have a 30-plus point game, have those triple-doubles, as you guys mentioned, it has been impressive. Certainly I think in Summer League you want to see the top players do really well. If you're a top pick, you want to, see that player thrive. I think that the times where Summer League can be concerning is if, a top pick looks really bad, or if a second or third year guy isn't looking really good. Those are the guys that should be distancing themselves from, the competition in Summer League. And that's what Ball's done so far.
Yeah, so far he's looked pretty good in a lot of aspects of the game. Talking to him with Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com. A couple other guys that stood out there as we're looking at, the Summer League. We talked about this the other day on the show, Alex, was that the NBA is almost becoming the NFL, where they're almost trying to fit something into every single month. And what makes the Summer League so popular, it seems like the ratings have been really good on ESPN for this NBA Summer League, is that the draft is on the last Thursday in June. 2 weeks later, you get to see the very best players on the floor almost immediately. So you're getting a chance to see De'Aaron Fox and Dennis Smith Jr. and Jason Tatum. I mean, you're getting a chance to really see who are some of the guys that you got a chance to see up close that really maybe have stood out to you.
Dennis Smith Jr. has really stood out to me. I like his game a lot. I think he was a steal for the Dallas Mavericks. I know Rick Carlisle can't wait to work with him. I think in most years we'd be talking about him as a top pick, the top point guard taken maybe. But this year was just so crazy when you look at Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, De'Aaron Fox. There were so many talented point guards in this draft, potential superstar point guards, that he got pushed down boards a little bit. But he's a freak athlete. He's a terrific player. I think he's going to be very good. I can't wait to see what he does in Dallas. There's obviously a big opportunity for him there to step in and potentially be a star. So I'm looking forward to watching him develop, and it's been a lot of fun watching him out here. Not only is he, really talented, he's just a lot of fun to watch. His game is really exciting. He, has crazy dunks and makes plays on both ends of the floor. He's listed out. I think Jason Tatum has stood out to me, especially early on. He really played well. He looked really, great on the offensive end. There was a few different plays where he was in the post or, fading away, knocking down a bunch of different hard shots. I think a lot of people look at his game and they didn't think he was as explosive or this athletic, but not only has he been able to, shoot the ball well, but, I think his explosiveness has surprised some people. And I think he's someone that is definitely a potential star as well. And then, it's unfortunate we didn't get to see more of Markelle Fultz, but he was dominant in those games in Utah. He had, some really nice highlight plays. So I think he could be someone that I'm a huge fan of Fultz, as you know. So I think watching him going forward is going to be a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, sure is. And obviously he had the ankle sprain. We saw De'Aaron Fox with an ankle sprain. We see Tatum with the knee. You got a lot of guys kind of dialing it back down a little bit now as we get to the end of the Summer League. Let's look at some of the things that are out there right now and give us your take on what's happening with the Knicks and Carmelo. They obviously got the new GM today, Scott Perry, who's had a wild ride. I mean, he was in Orlando for 50 some days.
Not even long enough to get the key card or find out where the executive washroom is.
Orlando, Sacramento, now New York. Pretty wild time for Scott Perry, but I guess his first order of business is this Carmelo Anthony deal. Number one, did they hire the right GM? And number two, what's going to happen with Carmelo?
Well, first of all, I think Scott Perry is the right guy. He did a really good job in Sacramento this offseason. He was with Rob Hennigan in Orlando, and he was someone that had a lot of say in some of their moves. And I think especially early on when they were making a lot of those draft picks and trying to rebuild the roster. I think in the last 2-3 years we saw they made some questionable trades and things like that. But I'm not sure, how much of that was Perry, how much of that was ownership. Scott Skiles was there at one point, and he had some say in decisions as well. I think there was definitely a win-now push in Orlando. And I think what he did in Sacramento is more, representative of his, style of rebuilding. So I'm excited to see what he can do in New York. The whole situation with Carmelo Anthony to me is so weird because you had the report that Steve Mills hadn't met with Carmelo and the organization and front office hadn't met with him and talked about, potentially making this work long term. And that just seems crazy to me. I think it was also really strange that they weren't sure Mills was going to be the guy going forward, yet they let him give Tim Hardaway Jr. that crazy contract. It just doesn't make sense to me why you don't bring in a GM sooner if that was the plan. It doesn't really make sense to, go wait until the end of July and make these free agent moves and alienate your star player and then bring in GM and say, okay, fix all the problems we just created for you. I don't like that approach necessarily. I would have gotten this done sooner. But, they're obviously working on a different time frame. I do think they brought the right guy in. The question is, in New York, are they going to give him the ability to fix this? With David Griffin, they were having talks with him, yet they weren't going to give him final say over personnel moves. They weren't going to let him bring in his own staff. There were a lot of questions there. I think Scott Perry could be really good, but they need to give him, some room to actually make moves and make decisions and, put the right people around him. Otherwise, this could just be another failure for the Knicks. They need to surround him with the right talent.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I guess the reports out there, the Knicks are hoping that he will expand the list of teams that he would accept a trade to because it seemed pretty limited, right? So do you think Carmelo will budge about some of the areas that he would be willing to go to?
I don't think he'll budge. I don't think there's necessarily other teams out there that are interested in Carmelo right now. That's the problem. I think this is wishful thinking from New York, but, if you're a team right now this season, it's hard to justify giving up a lot for Carmelo Anthony. He makes a ton of money. And I think most people feel like, the Warriors are really far ahead of the pack this year. You have really good contending teams, right outside, right behind the Warriors with Cleveland, Boston, San Antonio. There's a number of teams out there that are really talented. So it's not like you're going to get Carmelo if you're, or you're going to even give up a lot for Carmelo if you're a team that's struggling. I think I don't think there's other teams out there that are really fighting to get him. I think Cleveland and Houston right now are the two teams to look at.
Alex Kennedy with us. Alex, what does it say about the league where a player of Carmelo Anthony's skill set isn't wanted?
Yeah, it's really strange. I think it's more about his contract than anything. But I think also, you've seen that over these past few years with the Knicks struggling, people have kind of changed their opinion about Carmelo a bit. I think that there's this view that, he just puts up bad numbers or good numbers on a bad team, And that I think he's been underrated a bit. I do. I think it is tough because he does need the ball in his hands a lot, and he's not the most efficient star player. But if you look at his numbers, he has been very good over the last few years. It's just a contract situation, I think, the fact that he's getting a bit older. And, if he does, you don't want to, trade a ton of assets for him if he's going to go to your team and then not necessarily be happy. I think that's why the Houston thing is so interesting because he's friends with Chris Paul. James Harden has been recruiting him. Everyone wants that to work out, including Carmelo. So I think, and they'd be a contending team potentially in the Western Conference. So I think that makes the most sense, in my opinion. Cleveland, I don't even think that makes as much sense. I wouldn't do it if I was Cleveland, if you're going to have to give up someone like Kevin Love, who's on a pretty good contract and is locked up for a few years for an aging Carmelo Anthony. I'm not sure that's the right move. I think that closes your window sooner. And I think that's kind of what teams are weighing right now. Do you go and trade for a talent like Carmelo, but with his age and contract, I think it makes the things a little bit more difficult.
Alex, there's a report out there that Paul George apparently is saying that KD and Westbrook are friends again, but they haven't acknowledged it. And were George and KD almost teammates in Golden State? There was a rumor that Indiana offered George for Clay.
Yeah, I found that interesting. It makes sense for both sides. I know Indiana, they like Klay Thompson, and that gives you a new star to build around. And I think if you're, Golden State, I understand why they turn it down as well. Thompson is a perfect fit alongside Steph Curry in that backcourt. He obviously stretches the floor for them, but he's so good defensively as well. So on both ends of the floor, he's been so important for them. And you know you're getting with Klay. He's on a great contract for the next several years. I get why both teams, did what they did and decided not to do it. As far as Westbrook and KD being friends, I can't really see that. I guess Paul George would know way better than I would, since he's talked to Kevin Durant apparently in the last few days about going to Oklahoma City. He's talked to Westbrook since they became teammates. So, he would know more than I would there. But I don't know. I find that strange. I think Westbrook would be the reason why they wouldn't be friends still. He really took that whole decision hard. He didn't like the way that Durant went about it. That was the issue early on. Maybe they've made up since then. Maybe they're just on okay terms and not necessarily talking, but they're not on bad terms. I don't really know. But it seems to me like the relationship is still somewhat awkward.
Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com. Alex, you saw the Contavious ColePope deal, 1 year, $18 million. Is that deal kind of something that suggests that the market is kind of resetting itself for next year?
Yeah, definitely. I think his situation was interesting because he kind of ran out of options and had to find the best situation for him. That really meant going to a big market on a 1 year deal where he could essentially play a lot and fit really well in their system. So that situation was a bit extreme. But I do think you look at teams around the NBA and executives around the NBA. I talked about that this year we saw the cap go from a projected 101 million to 99 million. Next summer it should drop down a little bit more. So things are definitely coming back down to earth a bit after some crazy free agent spending. I think that's going to continue next summer. And I think also it kind of shows how the league values shooting guards today. Really, it seems like the league is looking more for, guys that can play the 3 and 4, big wings that are super athletic. And the league does value point guards still too, but shooting guards have kind of gotten left behind a bit, I think. And that's something that we've seen from, ColePope's free agency. It's unfortunate for him because he had an $80 million offer from the Pistons to extend his contract. But then once they got Avery Bradley, they didn't really need him anymore. Brooklyn was not interested in giving him a huge deal. So now he has to, play the season out, hope he has a strong year with the Lakers, and then potentially sign a big deal next summer.
Alex Kennedy in Vegas. Just give us some takes. I don't know how much you saw of the Sixers up close, but Korkmaz, as he got into it, seemed like an interesting guy. Bolden, he was a guy that a lot of people seem to be talking about out there. We know Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, who played last year. He's probably going to be on the roster, but it seems like the Sixers are going to have a very interesting training camp figuring out what to do with a lot of these pieces, especially guys like Korkmaz and Bolden, who – I don't know if they're going to keep Bolden over here or send him back, but Korkmaz basically paid to come back over or to come over here. So I think that should be some interesting, a very interesting training camp for them, figuring out who the 15 guys are going to keep her over here.
Yeah, and I like the way they approach Summer League too. Having the opportunity to look at all these guys and see who stood out. And I think that, when you have that many open, roster spots, I think that's really smart. So they did a good job of kind of filling the roster with intriguing guys and checking them all out. I like Bolden a lot. I think he could be really good. I like Korkmaz too, but I think, Bolden's someone that has gotten a lot of attention here in Vegas, and I think he's turned a lot of heads. I'm excited to see what he can do. It was good to see some of the, veteran guys around the team, veteran meaning Ben Simmons. It seems strange to say that still, but he's been around a ton. He's been here for all the different events, been really vocal with the team, and I would like seeing that, especially from a young guy that's been, that was a top pick. You want to see him step into that leadership role. Really the only other guys that have been here that I could think of, LeBron came out for the Cavs. John Wall has been here supporting the Wizards. There haven't really been a lot of, big name guys here supporting younger players, but Ben Simmons is obviously one of those guys. I'm excited to see what he can do this year. It's been interesting. I think it's tough with the Fultz injury. I was really looking forward to seeing more Fultz, but I think the Sixers have had a pretty good summer league, and it kind of sets them up for training camp to be able to evaluate these guys and give them some more insight. Obviously, they've seen even more behind the scenes of practices and things like that, but I think they approach Summer League the right way.
Hey, I don't know if you've seen any of Simmons, but any buzz about him? And does he look all right? He said he was asked in the ESPN telecast the other night, is it frustrating that you can't go out there? But if you were to play it, what percentage? And he said, ready to play. So is that 100%. He said basically ready to play. It seems that in his mind, no restrictions. Yeah,
it's funny. He's been around a ton. And then the other day, they had like a media night, and he came out, and basically, media members could, play basketball, play pickup on the court, and stuff like that. And he came out and he was playing a little bit. He was having some fun out there. He's been working really hard. He's been in the gym a ton working on his game. So not only is he trying to get healthy, he's been trying to improve his game so that when he does go out there, he could be really impactful. I like what I've seen from him so far from a leadership standpoint. He looks like he's in good shape. It seems like he's working extremely hard. I know he's posting all these videos on Instagram and Twitter of him working out in the gym super late at night. I know he's putting up a ton of shots and trying to improve that jumper. So I like what I've seen from him. I'm excited to see him play. I'm
sure he looked all world against members of the media. Alex Kennedy, Alex Kennedy with us from HoopsHype.com.
Hey, he was banging jumpers. 10 in a row he had. He looked like Nick Stauskas in his pre-draft video.
Knocking him down. Boom, boom, boom. How about Derrick Rose, Alex, and the Bucks? Does that marriage make any sense with where the Bucks are? I know those two sides have met up twice. No deal yet, but there's a lot of talk about it.
Well, yeah, I think Milwaukee's interested because they want to take that next step in the Eastern Conference. Obviously Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be a guy that handles the ball a lot, so that's something that Derrick Rose has to factor in. Is he going to be playing off the ball? Is he okay not having the ball in his hands? But if you're Derrick Rose at this point, you can't really be picky. He doesn't really have a ton of offers out there, a ton of interest out there. So I think that's where this mutual interest comes from. He knows he has to go to a team and play really well, preferably a playoff team, and play well, and then if he does that, proves he's healthy for another year, has a productive season, then he can maybe get paid next summer. So I think all the free agents right now are kind of in that boat where they're looking at the situations right now and looking to set themselves up to have a strong year so that next summer they can lock in a multi-year deal or a bigger deal. If he does go to Milwaukee, it's not going to be a ton of money, I don't think. I think it may surprise some people, but the fact that he's still out there is somewhat surprising in itself. So I'm curious to see what happens, but I think it makes sense for both sides. He wants to go help a contending team, show what he can do. Milwaukee wants to kind of close the gap on Cleveland, Boston, some of those top teams in the Eastern Conference, and separate themselves from the Torontos and Washingtons out there. So I get it for both sides, and certainly going to play with someone like Jason Kidd, head coach, for a point guard, it doesn't get much better than that. So I get where the interest comes from.
How about Rondo and the Pelicans? There are some reports that DeMarcus Cousins wants to bring him to New Orleans.
Yeah, I think those are accurate. New Orleans has been talking to a lot of different point guards. There were a number of veterans that they reached out to. There were a number of overseas guys they actually reached out to, offered minimum contracts to. They had trade talks with the Pistons about Reggie Jackson. They've been looking at all their options because they want to improve that backup point guard spot. You have Drew Holiday, but with Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins, they want to make sure they have a point guard that can get those guys the ball and set the offense up nicely. So I think that's where the interest comes from. Obviously, Cousins and Rondo are both Kentucky guys. They have a relationship there, so and as is Anthony Davis. So there's definitely a connection there. I think the interest is real. Whether or not Rondo is interested in taking a smaller deal with the Pelicans remains to be seen. I know he's still talking to the Lakers and the Knicks and teams like that. So I think it's a possibility, but I'm not sure anything is imminent at this point.
All right, we'll leave Alex Kennedy with Hoops from HoopsHype.com at Alex Kennedy NBA on Twitter with this one. You wrote the piece about the league's most underrated and some glowing remarks about one T.J. McConnell in that piece.
Yeah, that was my favorite quote of the entire article. That's why I put it first. I thought it was pretty funny what the player had to say. But I was on the phone with the player. I basically went through and asked 15 different NBA players who their most underrated player was in the league. Who they thought was most underrated. And yeah, one Eastern Conference big man, basically gave a minute-long rant about how McConnell was really underrated, how he is really tough to go against, how he never backed down. He's kind of like, that annoying younger brother. That's kind of the way he was talking about him. But no, I think McConnell with his stamina, that's kind of what impressed teams during pre-draft workouts for him. He was really, he never backed down from anyone. He had great stamina, and then he exceeded all expectations in the NBA. So I do agree. I think he's someone that doesn't get a lot of credit. People don't talk about him much, but he's been really good.
Read that piece on the most underrated players over at HoopsHype.com. He's Alex Kennedy, and in Vegas for the Summer League, which is winding down. There'll be no basketball after a couple of days here at Alex Kennedy NBA. Alex, thanks, pal.
Thanks a lot. Take care.